My name's Chris Allen. I come from the security software world in the 90s to social software, and now I am in what I really consider to be one of the ultimate social devices, the iPhone. And I want to make it even more social, which is kind of my mission over the next couple of years. Okay, so first today, in 9 months, iPhone has already gotten 28% of the US smartphone market, as compared to 41 for BlackBerry, which is the biggest percent. That's growing rapidly. More importantly for us is that the iPhone has 71% of all US mobile internet usage. Overall, of all the internet, we're approaching 1/10 of 1%. So we're talking about all internet traffic, the iPhone is already taking 1/10 of 1%. For some iPhone-optimized sites like New York Times and LA Times, it's approaching 1%. So there's a huge opportunity for sites that have done just a little bit extra to make sure that they're optimized for the iPhone. There are also thousands of iPhone-optimized web apps out there. I love my movies one where I can instantly go to movies in my location. They recently added a feature where you can bookmark these web pages so they actually show up on your screen as additional buttons. Last week, they made 2 announcements. One was in regards to the iPhone in the enterprise. The iPhone has not been as well adopted in enterprise for a variety of reasons. I think most importantly was they wanted to get the iPhone out. And this year, they're making a lot of changes to make it a lot more attractive to corporations. Push email, calendars, all these different features that we're talking there. I think the most interesting one is the active sync support. So basically, they've directly licensed from Microsoft the ability to use the active sync software that's in Microsoft Exchange. The advantage that this gives them is that they can do push without any kind of centralization. And I feel like this is very much a direct response to RIM, which also does push, but it does push through centralization. You know, there can be some advantages to centralization as well, but I do believe that this particular choice was made to be a threat. Also last week, I'm sure you've all heard, the native code SDK was released. You have to develop it only on an Intel Mac. You can't develop it on other platforms quite yet, and it does require the latest Leopard operating system. The firmware that will actually allow you to load these things you're creating with the SDK will be available in June along with the new enterprise features. And right now they're calling that firmware 2.0. The SDK is free. You can download it now. It's a long download. However, it only allows you to test on the emulator. You have to get a certificate from Apple for code signing, which costs $99. At this point, I do not know of any independent third party who has actually received that certificate. Well, no, that was, okay, so that was a 114, basically Apple's released some firmware that some people have basically done the same cracks that they've been doing with other things, but it's not actually the 2.0 firmware. So anyhow, $99 for code signing, and that is supposedly the only fee there's going to be. So this is a pretty radical difference. If you've ever developed applications for other phones, if you're especially mainline phones, I know somebody who pays about $50,000 for just in all the different fees to the carriers every time they come out with a new software product to be able to get it on there. So this is a pretty radical change. Now I recognize those costs are less on smartphones, but I think it's important. These are the same APIs and tools that are used by Apple. It includes access to the 3D graphic hardware, which I think you're going to be seeing some interesting new things being done in the graphic area. It does include the rudimentary location information that is now being used by the Google Maps application. It includes access to the accelerometer. I'm particularly intrigued by things where you can do stuff by shaking the phone. Somebody calls, I don't want them. Things of that nature. And of course, the iPhone has got a very extensive media capability, being able to access that in other unique ways, I think will be very powerful. I'm not going to go into what all these different things are, but basically Cocoa Touch is the variant on the Cocoa user interface that's optimized for touch, and the media core services and CoreOS are largely the same as is currently used for Macintosh software. So it's very familiar to anybody who's already done Cocoa development on the Mac. The business model is that developers distribute exclusively via the iPhone App Store, and there's some advantages and disadvantages to this. One of the things that's very interesting here is that 70% of the revenue goes to developers. Now, a lot of developers who are used to web-based models will go, gosh, you know, I'm only paying 5% to Coggy to do this, paying 10% to somebody else. But when you compare it to some models that are out there for mobile phones where you're paying as much as 55 or 60% to carriers and other bodies to be able to sell apps, it's a good deal. Free apps are allowed. You can submit code-signed free apps, and they will distribute them.